Have you ever wondered what happens when a brilliant mind is judged not for its abilities, but simply because of the color of his skin? Let me tell you the story of Caleb Daniels, a quiet yet exceptionally gifted 15-year-old whose passion for mathematics set him on a collision course with a cruel and prejudiced system. Caleb stood in front of Westfield Academy's grand limestone entrance, his old canvas backpack clutched tightly as he took in the shimmering reflection of the early morning sun on the polished bronze letters above the door. His heart pounded with nervous excitement while he remembered the reassuring words of his mother, who had sacrificed so much working extra shifts to give him the opportunity to learn in a place as refined as this. "You got this," he murmured softly, echoing the gentle encouragement she had offered that very morning. Stepping through those towering doors, Caleb couldn't help but notice how different this school was compared to his old public school. The hallways gleamed with polished marble floors and rich mahogany paneling, and glass cases proudly displayed awards that testified to generations of academic excellence. Students in crisp uniforms strolled by, their confident chatter filled with dreams of European vacations and leisurely afternoons on luxury yachts. In contrast, Caleb's summer had been spent poring over calculus textbooks at the local public library and lending a helping hand at his mother's modest catering business. Deep down, though, he knew that beneath his humble beginnings lay a mind as sharp as any born into privilege. Soon enough, Caleb made his way to his advanced calculus class. He found a seat at the front of an otherwise empty room, carefully arranging his neatly organized notebooks and freshly sharpened pencils on the desk. Mathematics was his safe haven, a language in which every equation made sense when life outside these pristine walls often felt confusing and unfair. Yet, as the classroom began to fill with older students, exchanging excited stories about their extravagant summers, an uneasy tension began to build. Their voices, laced with confidence and entitlement, underscored the unspoken differences between Caleb and the rest of them. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when the heavy door swung open with a determined force. Dr. Victoria Harrington entered with a click of her stiletto heels on the polished floor. At 43 years old, she carried a reputation as one of Westfield Academy's most demanding and unyielding instructors. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back into a tight bun, emphasizing the sharp angles of her face and the piercing cold blue eyes that scanned the room like a hawk searching for weakness. "Advanced calculus is not for the faint of heart," she declared, in a measured tone that brooked no argument, and her eyes briefly locked onto Caleb with a look that was as accusatory as it was disdainful. "I understand we have a new addition to our program," she said, pausing to study the class roster as if reading a list of misfits. Caleb Daniels. Even though the announcement carried a hint of reluctant acknowledgement of his talent, the tone in which she delivered it made it clear that in her eyes, Caleb was already an anomaly, a scholarship kid who did not quite belong. Caleb's response was soft yet steady as he said, "Yes, ma'am," his voice betraying both determination and a quiet sadness that hinted at the challenges ahead. Dr. Harrington's smirk, though fleeting, belied a deep-seated hostility toward anyone who threatened the carefully maintained order of her classroom. "We shall see," she replied coolly. "Westfield Academy stands by very high standards, standards that have forged some of the finest mathematical minds in our country. It is my duty to ensure those standards are never compromised." With that, she strode over to the whiteboard and boldly wrote the word calculus in neat capital letters, underlining it with a swift, decisive motion that seemed to mark the beginning of an uphill battle for Caleb. As the lesson unfolded, Dr. Harrington launched into an intense exploration of limits and continuity. Caleb, whose mind thrived in the realm of numbers, followed along with ease. Yet with every correct answer he provided, her gaze grew colder and her questions more pointed. It wasn't long before she began challenging him in front of the class, her tone taking on a mocking quality that left no room for doubt. She saw his intelligence not as a gift, but as a threat to her authority. When she called on him to demonstrate the formal definition of a limit, Caleb's clear and precise explanation of the epsilon-delta concept was met not with praise but with a curt remark, "Memorization is useful, but true understanding is another matter entirely." Despite his respectful offer to explain the concept in a more visual, geometric way, her dismissive reply, "No one needs to challenge what I teach," left Caleb feeling exposed and deeply hurt. After class ended, as Caleb gathered his materials with trembling hands, he overheard Dr. Harrington speaking in hushed, bitter tones with another teacher in the hallway. Her words were laced with contempt as she complained about the so-called special treatment given to scholarship students, claiming that these awards were merely tokens of diversity rather than reflections of true merit. The sting of her words hit Caleb hard, adding another layer of pain to the many burdens he already carried. Still, he tried to focus on the day's lessons, determined to let his work speak louder than the cruelty he endured. In that moment of vulnerability, a warm voice broke through his thoughts. A girl with dark, curly hair and kind brown eyes introduced herself as Patel. "I'm a scholarship student too," she said softly, "but I'm here for chemistry rather than calculus." Her gentle demeanor and empathetic smile offered Caleb a much-needed reprieve from the harshness of his day, and he returned her greeting with a grateful nod. Maya confided that Dr. Harrington's treatment of scholarship kids was not unique. She believed that the professor was embittered by a misguided notion that the school's legacy was being threatened by outsiders like them. As they walked together toward the cafeteria, a room more reminiscent of a high-end restaurant than a typical lunch hall, Caleb listened intently, the bitterness of Dr. Harrington's disdain echoing in every word. The next few days only deepened the conflict between Caleb and Dr. Harrington. In class, she continued to pile on questions and challenges in a manner that was both calculated and cruel. During a group exercise on optimization problems, Caleb found himself reluctantly placed with 3 older seniors whose eyes were filled with quiet resentment. Their assignment was a complicated manufacturing problem with multiple constraints, and as they bickered over the best approach, Caleb quietly sketched out a more efficient solution in his notebook. "We should define our objective function first," one of the seniors, Bradford, suggested, his voice laced with skepticism when Caleb proposed a linear programming method that involved concepts more advanced than the current curriculum. The room fell silent as Caleb explained, in simple yet confident terms, that the library had plenty of books on the subject and that his idea, though unconventional, was mathematically sound. Before anyone could react further, Dr. Harrington appeared at their table, her eyes narrowing in unmistakable disapproval. "Mr. Daniels," she said sharply, "since you believe you are beyond our curriculum, please demonstrate your alternative method for the entire class." With every pair of eyes fixed on him, Caleb rose to the challenge, walking to the whiteboard with a mixture of determination and trepidation. His hands trembled slightly as he meticulously translated the manufacturing constraints into a set of mathematical inequalities, his clear explanation slowly winning over even the skeptical murmurs of his classmates. When he finally revealed that the maximum profit would be $17,450 for the proposed production configuration, a tense silence filled the room. Dr. Harrington inspected his work with a cold, calculating eye before offering a curt nod of reluctant acknowledgement. "The method is valid, though unnecessarily complex for this particular problem," she said, her tone heavy with disdain, "and in this classroom we adhere strictly to the curriculum." Her words, dripping with condescension, left Caleb feeling even more isolated and misunderstood. At the end of the class, when the bell rang, Dr. Harrington's voice cut sharply through the lingering whispers of departing students as she called out, "Mr. Daniels, a moment!" With a heavy heart and a mind burdened by the weight of injustice, Caleb approached her desk. Her tone was icy as she questioned him about where he had encountered those advanced techniques. "I found them in an old operations research textbook at the public library and in some MIT OpenCourseWare lectures online," he replied honestly, his voice small but resolute. Her response was laced with suspicion and malice. "Exceptional claims require exceptional evidence, Mr. Daniels. Remember that." With that, Caleb retreated from the classroom, a mixture of sorrow and determination swirling within him, knowing that each day he would have to fight not only for his academic place, but also for the dignity he deserved. Caleb Daniels found Maya waiting for him in the hallway after class, her eyes shining with both admiration and concern. "That was impressive," she said as they walked together, though her tone held a note of warning. "But I think you just painted a target on your back." Caleb shook his head, his voice low and earnest. "I wasn't trying to show off. It really was the most efficient approach. he replied. Doc Harrington doesn't care about efficiency. Maya's expression grew somber as she added, she cares about control, and you just showed her something she can't control. The next day, as if to cement her sinister plan, Dr. Harrington distributed the quiz with a thin, almost mocking smile. That quiz was unlike any other. Caleb's paper contained problems that went far beyond the usual Taylor series exercises. They delved into error approximation and convergence proofs, topics that no one else in the class was prepared to tackle. When Dr. Harrington noticed Caleb's momentary hesitation, she demanded, "Is there a problem, Mr. Daniels?" His steady reply of "No, ma'am" was filled with a mix of quiet resolve and hidden pain. By the time he completed the last problem, explaining the Lagrange remainder theorem with flawless clarity, Caleb knew that this was merely the beginning of Dr. Harrington's relentless testing of his limits. When the graded quizzes were returned the following Monday, his perfect score was tainted by a cryptic note scribbled in red ink. "See me about the young mathematician's competition." Maya leaned over his shoulder and whispered, "The YMC, that's for college students. She's definitely escalating." Caleb stared at the note, a storm of uncertainty and determination brewing within him. Whatever twisted game Dr. Harrington was playing, he was resolved to meet the challenge. Not to prove her wrong, but to prove to himself that he truly belonged. The bus ride home took him from Westfield Academy's immaculate grounds to a modest neighborhood with chain-link fences, a world where no one questioned his right to be there. As he walked the 3 blocks from the bus stop, the weight of the day seemed to lift ever so slightly. At home, the comforting aroma of simmering stew welcomed him, a gentle reminder of the stability his mother, Gloria Daniels, had worked so hard to provide. "That you, baby?" she called from the kitchen. "Yeah, Mom," Caleb answered quietly as he dropped his backpack and made his way toward her. Gloria, with fine lines etched by years of hard work, yet eyes filled with fierce pride, embraced her son warmly. "How was school today?" she asked as she returned to stirring the stew. Caleb hesitated for a moment, considering whether to reveal Dr. Harrington's biting antagonism, but instead offered a measured reply. "Challenging, but good. Challenging is good." Her words, meant to soothe and bolster him, did little to ease the storm of emotions swirling inside him. After dinner, Caleb retreated to his bedroom, a sanctuary adorned with posters of famous mathematicians and hand-drawn diagrams of complex functions. His small desk cradled his cherished second-hand laptop, a treasure he had saved up for by tutoring neighborhood kids. Late that evening, Caleb opened his email to find a message from Dr. Chen, his former middle school math teacher who had been the first to recognize his exceptional gift. Attached was a new research paper on non-Euclidean geometry, along with a note that hinted at future scholarship opportunities for next year's MIT summer program. Caleb's heart swelled with gratitude. Without Dr. Chen's mentorship and recommendation, the Westfield Scholarship would have been nothing more than a distant dream. He immersed himself in the elegant theorems of the paper until midnight, losing track of time as he absorbed every detail. Meanwhile, across town in her elegant tutor's home, Dr. Victoria Harrington nursed a glass of Pinot Noir as she reviewed Caleb's quiz once again. His solutions were not just correct, they were elegant and efficient in a way that unsettled her deeply. Her husband, Richard, a corporate attorney, glanced over from his armchair. "Still obsessing over that scholarship student?" he asked. "I'm not obsessing," she retorted defensively. "I'm concerned about academic standards. Dean Peterson keeps pushing this diversity initiative without considering whether these students are truly prepared for Westfield's rigor." Richard raised an eyebrow, suggesting gently, "Have you considered that maybe he's simply gifted?" "Of course I've considered it," Dr. Harrington snapped. "But even gifted students need a proper foundation and structure. Self-teaching can leave dangerous gaps." The following morning in the faculty lounge, Dr. Harrington confided her concerns to her colleague, Dr. Marcus Bell, who taught advanced physics. "The Daniels boy," she said sharply, "is causing quite a stir. He created an elegant proof for a quantum mechanics problem yesterday, one I've never seen approached that way." Marcus looked surprised but maintained a measured tone. "He's remarkable in my class as well. Some minds just work differently." Dr. Harrington's frown deepened. A 15-year-old with no formal training suddenly demonstrating graduate-level insights does not add up. She hesitated before suggesting, "Or perhaps someone is helping him, maybe even doing his work. Though she quickly softened her tone, it was clear that her suspicion was mounting. "I'm not accusing anyone yet," she clarified, "but I intend to find out exactly how special Mr. Daniels truly is. The young mathematicians competition should provide ample opportunity." Back in the classroom, Caleb remained blissfully unaware of the scrutiny building around him. Each time he answered one of Dr. Harrington's carefully aimed questions, he noticed a meaningful glance exchanged between her and another observing teacher. The game was changing, and Caleb still did not know all the rules. Then, 1 week later, the young mathematicians competition was announced on the school bulletin board. It was a prestigious event, typically reserved for undergraduate students, with a special note indicating that exceptional secondary students might participate, with faculty recommendation. Maya nudged Caleb as they passed the notice, whispering, "She's setting something up." Caleb studied the announcement intently. The competition was set to take place in the school auditorium, with participants solving advanced problems before a live audience of students, faculty, and visiting mathematicians from nearby universities. The winner would receive a prestigious summer internship at the National Mathematics Research Institute. Caleb couldn't help but wonder aloud, why would she recommend me if she doesn't truly believe in me? Maya's response was blunt. "Because she isn't expecting you to succeed. This is her chance to prove that you're just another scholarship kid." That very afternoon, Dr. Harrington summoned Caleb to her desk after class. "I have entered your name for the YMC," she informed him with a professional but cold tone. "It will be quite different from your independent studies. The problems require rigorous mathematical training and sophisticated techniques." Caleb managed a careful "thank you for the opportunity," though every word stung like a rebuke. "Dean Peterson is very interested in your unusual aptitude," she continued, adding that several mathematics professors from State University would be in attendance. Her voice then dropped to a meaningful pause as she added, "It's quite a significant platform. The competition will focus heavily on differential equations and complex analysis, areas we haven't fully covered in class yet. Perhaps you should focus your extracurricular reading accordingly." The challenge was clear. Over the next 2 weeks, rumors about the competition spread like wildfire throughout Westfield. What had once been a quiet academic event was now becoming a spectacle. Caleb overheard snippets in the hallways. "Harrington's finally going to expose that scholarship kid," someone whispered. "I heard university professors are coming specifically to witness it. My father's on the board and he says the administration is divided about these diversity admissions." Each comment cut deep. Yet Caleb transformed his anxiety into rigorous preparation. During lunch breaks, he delved into advanced textbooks at the library. After school, he solved practice problems until his hand cramped around his pencil. Late into the night, he watched university lectures online until his eyes burned with exhaustion. His mother, Gloria, noticed his escalating stress. "What's going on, Caleb? You're barely sleeping," she asked one evening. With a heavy sigh, he explained the situation. Gloria's face hardened with worry. "Is this teacher singling you out because you're black?" Caleb replied softly. "It's not that simple, Mum. She thinks I don't belong at Westfield academically, that I got in because of diversity initiatives, not merit. Proving myself means sacrificing sleep and risking my health." Gloria sat beside him, her voice tender yet firm. "Baby, you have nothing to prove to people who have already decided not to see your worth." But Caleb insisted, "I do have something to prove, not for her but for myself and for other kids who might face the same prejudice. If I fail, they'll use it to justify keeping others like me out." Gloria wrapped her arm around his shoulders and whispered, "Then we'll face it together. But you must rest. A tired mind makes mistakes." The day before the competition, Dr. Harrington met with Caleb once again after class. "I have selected a problem specifically for you," she said, her voice laced with an unsettling mix of challenge and derision. The problem was drawn from her doctoral research in chaotic solutions in nonlinear differential equations, a topic far beyond the undergraduate level. Caleb recognized immediately that her challenge had escalated, pushing him to confront mathematics that few in his position had ever attempted. As he left the classroom, he encountered Dr. Bell in the hallway. The kindly physics teacher placed a gentle hand on Caleb's shoulder and said, "Mathematics isn't about where you come from, son. It's about how your mind works. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His words, warm and sincere, rekindled a spark of hope in Caleb's weary heart. That night, Caleb made a decision that would shape his destiny. He opened his treasured laptop and logged onto a private online forum for mathematics enthusiasts, where he had been active under the username MathNomad for 2 years. There, he posted a message asking for help with chaos theory and nonlinear differential equations in preparation for the competition the following day. Within moments, his online colleagues responded generously, sharing advanced resources and insights that boosted his understanding and confidence. As dawn broke, Caleb closed his laptop with a determined resolve. Whatever devious plan Dr. Harrington had devised, he would face it, armed with every bit of knowledge he had acquired, from textbooks and lectures to the supportive wisdom of his online mentors. The day of the competition arrived, and the Westfield Academy auditorium buzzed with an energy that was both electric and daunting. Rows of seats were filled with excited students, while faculty and administrators occupied the center section, and a group of distinguished university professors sat near the front, animatedly discussing theoretical concepts. Caleb arrived early and selected a seat at the far end of the participants' table. He arranged his pencils and blank paper with methodical precision, a small ritual that helped steady his nerves in the midst of the mounting pressure. When the competition began, Caleb listened intently as the first challenge was announced, a series of complex differential equations and problems in complex analysis that demanded not only technical skill but also deep, creative thinking. Each problem was designed to push the students beyond conventional methods, testing both their understanding of advanced concepts and their ability to innovate under pressure. As Caleb worked through the first problem, he felt the familiar rush of determination mixed with an undercurrent of dread, knowing that every step he took was being scrutinized by the very person who sought to undermine him. Throughout the competition, Dr. Harrington's presence was a constant, oppressive shadow. Every so often, Caleb would glance up and catch her steely gaze fixed on him, a look that was as cold and calculating as it was full of disdain. Her eyes followed his every move as if she were waiting for him to falter. Meanwhile, whispers filled the auditorium, remarks questioning whether a scholarship student like Caleb could ever truly measure up. But instead of succumbing to the pressure, Caleb channeled every ounce of pain, every slight and every disparaging comment into an unyielding resolve to prove his worth. As the final minutes of the competition ticked away, Caleb reviewed his work one last time. In that quiet, tense moment, he recalled the warmth of his mother's stew, the encouraging words of Dr. Bell, and the camaraderie of his online mentors. No matter how harsh Dr. Harrington's challenges had been, he had risen to every occasion. When the buzzer sounded, he leaned back in his chair, exhausted but filled with a quiet pride that came from knowing he had given it his all. In the aftermath, as the audience began to disperse and the room slowly emptied, Caleb found himself standing alone in the silent auditorium. He realized that the competition was not just about mathematics. It was a test of his spirit, a battle against a system steeped in prejudice and control. Outside, as he stepped into the cool evening air, murmurs of admiration and disbelief began to circulate among the faculty and students. Maya found him among the departing crowd, her smile soft and sincere. "You did it, Caleb. Even if she never believed in you, you proved that you belong," she whispered. In that poignant moment, as the night sky stretched out above him, Caleb Daniels understood that his journey was far from over. The relentless cruelty of Dr. Harrington had not broken him. Instead, it had forged an unbreakable resolve. With the love of his mother, the wisdom of his mentors, and the quiet strength of his own brilliant mind, he knew that every challenge he faced was a step toward a future where his talent would finally be recognized and cherished. And so, with a determined heart and a spirit emboldened by both struggle and triumph, Caleb walked into the night, ready to embrace whatever came next, one resolute step at a time. Caleb Daniels entered the competition auditorium with a mix of apprehension and quiet determination. All the competitors, mostly college undergraduates, cast curious glances in his direction. A lanky student in a state university sweatshirt leaned over and said, "You must be Daniels, Harrington's prodigy. There are bets going around about whether you're the real deal." Caleb nodded politely without engaging, instead focusing on his breathing techniques as he tried to steady his nerves. The auditorium lights dimmed slightly when Dean Peterson, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, approached the podium. He offered a brief, generic welcome before introducing Dr. Victoria Harrington as the competition organizer. Dr. Harrington took the stage with poised confidence, her tailored blazer and pearls projecting an unyielding authority that seemed to overshadow everything else in the room. With a calm yet commanding tone, she declared, "Mathematics reveals truth not through opinion or debate, but through rigorous proof and precise reasoning." Her gaze swept over the audience and briefly locked onto Caleb, as if daring him to defy the expectations she had set. She explained that each competitor would be given a different problem and 30 minutes to develop a solution, which they would then present and defend before a panel of judges. The problems were displayed on a large screen behind the stage, visible to everyone. Then, with a subtle yet unmistakable emphasis on his special admission to the advanced placement program, she announced, "We will begin with our youngest participant, Caleb Daniels." As he approached the podium, he felt the weight of over 100 pairs of eyes tracking his every movement. The screen lit up with a dense partial differential equation featuring non-constant coefficients and unusual boundary conditions. Murmurs rippled through the audience, and even the other competitors looked startled by its complexity. One visiting professor leaned forward and whispered to a colleague that the problem was research level in dynamic systems. Dr. Harrington's tone was icy as she said, "You have 30 minutes, Mr. Daniels." Caleb stared at the intimidating equation, his initial confidence wavering. It was clear that this challenge was designed to force him into failure. For several excruciating minutes he stood frozen at the whiteboard, marker trembling in his hand as whispers filled the auditorium. Then something within him shifted. Caleb straightened his shoulders and began writing a series of innovative transformations that took the problem in an unexpected direction. His elegant notation and fresh approach caught the attention of the judges, and one of them quietly asked, "What is he doing?" As his work unfolded, it became evident that he was employing perturbation theory in dynamical systems, a topic far beyond the undergraduate level. The judges noted that his solution even referenced techniques reminiscent of Zhang's recent research paper, and soon it emerged that Caleb was known online as Math Nomad. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. His mother, Gloria Daniels, seated near the back after her long day at work, clutched her purse tightly as tears of pride welled in her eyes. Meanwhile, whispers of admiration began to replace the earlier skepticism. Dr. Harrington's carefully constructed plan to humiliate him was crumbling before everyone's eyes, and the cruel glare on her face had turned to one of pale dismay. In that charged moment, as judges and visiting professors marveled at his breakthrough, Caleb's exceptional talent shone brightly. His performance not only silenced his harshest critics, but also validated his right to be there, setting the stage for a future where his gift for mathematics would be recognized, despite every institutional barrier. Caleb Daniels laughed as the tension of the past week began to dissolve. He almost forgot the one person who had his back from day one. "Not the only one," Maya corrected kindly, while Dr. Bell animatedly praised Caleb's physics work. Across the room, Bradford approached hesitantly, admitting, "That was impressive. I never imagined anyone could solve that problem and extend the theory." Caleb replied quietly, surprised by his newfound respect. Suddenly, a commotion at the auditorium entrance caught everyone's attention as Dr. Harrington returned, her face pale yet composed. She walked directly toward Caleb's group, and the room fell silent as she declared, "Mr. Daniels, I need to speak with you." Gloria stepped protectively closer. "I think you've said enough already," she insisted. Dr. Harrington then struggled visibly before apologizing publicly, admitting her biases had blinded her judgment. "I owe you both a sincere apology," she confessed. Her words softened the harsh atmosphere. In the following days, Westfield Academy embraced Caleb. Teachers showed genuine interest, and peers nodded in recognition. This public apology marked a turning point, as Caleb's talent not only earned academic advancement, but also inspired the community to confront its biases and seek true excellence indeed. Caleb Daniels laughed as the tension of the past week finally lifted. He remembered that even in his darkest moments, one person had always stood by him. "I owe you both so much," Dr. Harrington confessed with genuine emotion as she faced him and his mother, Gloria Daniels. "You would have been justified in wanting me removed from Westfield entirely," Gloria replied firmly. "That would not help students like you." Dr. Harrington admitted her harsh methods had blinded her to your true talent, and that the new scholarship screening process was uncovering extraordinary abilities hidden by narrow definitions. Caleb smiled as he mentioned mentoring 3 gifted students from his former middle school. "They remind me of what I once was," he said softly. Soon, Dean Peterson introduced Mr. Whitman, a distinguished donor who believed in excellence. "I hear you will publish your first paper next month," he said warmly, extending his hand. Later, as Caleb and Gloria drove away from Westfield, the setting sun cast long shadows over the campus, symbolizing a new era. This story reminds us that brilliance endures despite prejudice, and that change begins when we refuse to let bias define us. May we always strive together.